to oh
Sorry, I forgot that message. So everybody has to welcome that message. Sorry, guys. That's a that's a new thing. I have to get familiar. Go ahead, Harry. Thanks.
yeah, thanks Kelly. Well, thanks for inviting us, and um, I wanted to try and get across the unusualness of the group and the unusualness of how the group evolved, and it may give you an idea of how I look at things from a spiritual perspective rather than the usual way that other people are doing things. And um, when the before we started, I wanted to, I guess it's a plug a little. I just wanted to read one thing from my book, which is which is this book here that just got out about a month ago, and it's the last paragraph which I wrote. I just want that I wrote in the book, although it's on the first page, but it gives you an image of how I approach things, because you notice that I've worked in addiction. You notice I've worked with the indigenous people, the Muslim people, and now mental health. So I haven't been able. People aren't able to brand me in a certain area, although at the beginning it was indigenous, and then it was addiction, and now it's mental health. Addiction in this book, well dealt with specifically, is a metaphor for alleviating all human suffering in the world. It is the author's symbol to explain that healing of the soul and healing of the personal mind are one and the same, no matter what the description of their individual problems appear to be. Now, the reason I mention that is because I just saw that. Kelly, it's funny writing a book. You write a book and it's teaching you, and you're going through it. But that last paragraph was a realization of what I had actually written. I didn't even you know how you talk about stuff but you don't realize it.
Yes.
That was what that last paragraph was. I didn't really realize what my book was about, and and so I use, because I've been known in addiction, I use it as a metaphor, and it naturally transfers to what people come to me for and what the group came to me for. So we have, how did the group start? It's called Mental Health Transformations, of which Joe is a member, and five others. First of all, it's an invite only group, so we're not looking for a lot of people. We're looking for a quality and a certain texture within it. And it's kind of like I look for a certain quality. The first quality, of course, is that there must be some mental health scenario. The second is there has to be, the person has to experience the transformation. Now, some of all the group has worked with me, but of course they had teachers before I was there. That was a huge advantage when people have gone to uh, the teachings of others, and quite often they all had a grasp of the thought feeling paradigm that's expressed through the psychological model of the three principles. And so I look for, do they have an understanding of the spiritual? Can they soar? It's neat that they can fix their problem or they can deal with certain things, but are they able to move into that spiritual realm where the unknown is experienced, where we're touching the universal love of creativity, the universal love of expression? And so I look at that, and I guess you would say it's an indigenous way of looking at things, because they naturally soar into the silence of life. I asked an indigenous elder, why is it that they so easily step into silence? He says it's instinctive to us. And what I heard from that was, it's instinctive to everyone, all of you. It's instinct. But certain portals aren't open up as easily as they are within that culture. Of course, they have other things that aren't so easily opened up than other cultures and other colors have. But the instinctive ability, that's what Sid was talking about. See, I haven't taken any courses from anybody else. It's Sydney Banks is my teacher. That's who I came. And when Richard is here as well, he'll attest that when Sid's talked on Salt Spring Island, it was all spiritual. It was a spiritual reality. And then when the psychologist came, the tone changed and so on. And because I had a big ego, not to emphasize that to the utmost detail, but it was a big one. And I got stuck in where Sid was moving. I wasn't open to it. It took me only about 40 years to catch up to where he had moved to. So you can see I'm really, really fast, quick learner type of guy, type of thing. And within that time when I stopped growing, I never stopped growing. I just thought I stopped growing. Spiritually, I was still growing, but I wasn't conscious of it. And so I was developing all these skills and qualities in myself, opening up to whatever comes. And I had developed a skill set over the years. All that time when I thought I was stuck in the mud, I actually was growing. And then when it came to a point, a tipping point, which came at age 69, Kelly. So 27 or 28, I have what I consider quite a large spiritual oneness experience. Then which did not include thought. So you could see, oh, spiritual, really good. Psychological, what a mess this guy is, type of thing. Without thought, that's got to be the course of action. And that's what it was for me. And then I got content. About 65, I said, I'm stopped playing the meat market game. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just going to be happy and content. And my life was beautiful, no problems, peaceful. Everybody was running around trying to get what the three principles mean, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't care about any of that stuff. I already knew what I had. And for 4 years, I sat in that peace and contentment. I won't say it was all peace and contentment, because we all know the truth of that. It wasn't like that. But it was beautiful. And then I had a little talk with God. I said, God, thank you for this great life. It's fantastic. But I'm getting a little bored. It's so quiet. Maybe I could share. Next morning, 9 o'clock, I get up, 9:01, phone rings. Hi, Harry, could you take over a project for me working with the addicted people on Main and Hastings? And Vancouver has a big homeless section. Well, Kelly knows, she lives here. And a big addiction section, really West Coast. They do it really well here. And so I said, ooh, I don't like this area. But I had just had a little chit chat with God, so maybe I should listen. Everything exploded from there. I wasn't used to that. I was used to things petering out. This was, and all of a sudden, then I did a show with the addiction, alcoholism, three principles with Greg Suki. I didn't know anything about addiction, but I knew something about the spiritual nature of the principles. That's what I emphasized. So people said, oh, you're talking about the spiritual nature of addiction. I said, yeah, that's right. I didn't know that, but since they said so, I guess that was it, type of thing. And then when that show ended, the Muslim show came on. Tawhid, Spiritual Unity of the Three Principles with Omar Ben Mossa. Perfect combination. 26-year-old Muslim from Casablanca and a 74-year-old Jew from Vancouver. Perfect. You could see how it was made in heaven type of thing. Ideal. But I'm the type of guy people come to when they want a little bit more. They're looking for the spiritual nature. What was that spiritual stuff Sid was talking about? And so, and within that, I had a client, a guy who came to me, John Stiley, who was supposed to be here, and beautiful, beautiful, powerful guy. All the images of a loser, boom, 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 boom. Only one thing, he could soar. And that's where we went. I didn't talk about any of his problems. I don't want to talk about that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm an educator. So we went and we soared. And as we soared, he had a realization. Can you believe this? We go up into all this incredible wisdom. He's teaching me all this stuff, and he can't see his own beauty. So I said to him once, John, you realize how beautiful you are? And I'm not kidding. Since he's not here, I'm going to do the funny face. Are you ready for the funny face? Here we go. He goes like this for about 3 minutes. And then a big smile comes on his face, and he got it. He saw his own beauty. All this time, everybody was telling him, loser, 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 you know, in hospitals and in all the extreme stuff, all the drugs and all the stuff. And, oh, I'm beautiful. And then when he talked with confidence, talked beautiful. And one of the YouTube channels, we have his 8-minute talk. It's scintillating. Better than most of the people she has on the show here. That's how good it is. And because it's real, it's fresh, it's alive type of stuff. And so he comes in. Then another guy comes in, and he has a realization. Jay, and then I bring him to, we're a nice, cozy little group, the 2-3 of us meeting once a week. Very, very beautiful. But the trouble is, those two guys couldn't get anything out if it was hit them on the head. They were just comfy within their skins. And then Joe came in. I had seen Joe, and I said, this guy sure talks a lot, and he's got a lot of questions, but I hit him on something indigenous, and he connected to it. I said, oh, he's got an indigenous feeling in him. This is good. I like that. I don't get much of that. And so invited him to the group. Boom, he's got a talk at the Phoenix user group that he set up for us, asking a lot of questions. And before you knew it, there were 3 more that came in, all very powerful, all understanding mental health transformations. So we've got acute depression, acute anxiety, acute pain. We've got all the stuff, and we don't talk about any of it. All we do is talk about stuff that's really, really cool. And what happens with that is I'm really good. I'm the lead coach, but we all coach each other. It's not my group, it's our group. It just emerged organically. And now all of a sudden we've got all these talks. A lot started in the UK. And we did one talk with Bill Pettit. That was very cool. But I insisted that Bill Pettit would not control the meeting. He just talked for 10 minutes, the rest of the group. The group is the strength of what we're presenting. You see, guys, I learned something along the way. I'm not quite as stupid as I made myself sound, type of thing. I realized nobody, and I mean in the 3P community, in the non-3P community, will listen to Harry Debitsky talk about mental health. Nobody. But they will listen to the story, transformational stories, that they understand. And that's why Joe's here, and John would have been here, but he couldn't make it. Upset tummy, got lots of pain type of stuff. And So the fruit of the group is what the essence is, their story, their way of sharing, their transformation. That is what, and that's what I'm trying to peddle to the non-3P community, Kelly. The fruit. Harry Debitsky has never taken a psychology course, never will take a, I don't want to waste my time. But, you know, I can share a feeling, and these people share that feeling with me. And guess what happens to me? I grow. See how it works? It's so simple. Just share and listen. And the second part of it was always very difficult for me, Kelly. I wasn't a very good listener. Sid says, you never listen. You never listen. You know, and I go, oh, well, it's, you know, maybe I'm not perfect, you know, or stuff like that. And he hit me on the head. Something happening up there? What's this? I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't get it. But as the years go along, you start to listen. And guys, find your voice and be yourself. Don't try and copy other people. Waste of time. No following. Sid hated followers. Find your own essence within. Enjoy yourself. And laugh a little bit at yourself, at how funny you are as an ordinary human being who happens to be lucky enough to uncover the three precious jewels, mind, thought, and consciousness, as uncovered by Mr. Sidney Banks. Cool guy, by the way, very cool guy. So Joe, do you mind if we switch to Joe now, Kelly?
Yeah, no, not at all. And I was thinking, you know, Harry and I had a lovely little chat a week or so ago, and there was some juice in the rooms are, as you know, they change based on the people that show up. And you had shared some really interesting pieces around the journey with yourself to Sid, to, you know, Salt Spring, to the Kitsilano event where he was dressed as white, and some different things. So I'd love to, after Joe shares his experience, have you both talk about, you know, tidbits of your journey. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Joe.
sure. And when I talk about Salt Spring, I'm going to ask Richard to talk just for a sec, a little bit about what he felt about Salt Spring as well, because he was there. And in reality, I was a very good friend to Sid. Richard was even a better friend. So I'll just.
Of course, we're an open room here. All things possible. Hi, Joe.
Hiya.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a little background story on me. I mean, I was quite sick as a child, kind of chronic fatigue and a lot of pain. And so I missed a lot of school. That kind of caused a lot of mental health issues. And I went through different mental health professionals and given diagnosis and kind of told I wouldn't get well. And so I kind of just kind of lived my life the best I could, but kind of not much hope really, and getting stuck in my mind all the time and believing everything, getting overpowered by my thoughts. And so with obsessions and that. And then it just happened at the beginning of the lockdown in March that I picked up a book by Mara Olsen. And it just really hit me then about how we create the world from ourselves as a projector. And I just really saw something in there that completely shifted my whole view of life, that actually I wasn't a victim of life. I had this power within myself to actually make changes and see that actually I could recover from this. I could move in life. I did have potential. And then I happened to find Sid's name in there. And then I checked out the Hawaii lectures. And then he said that how we all live in mental health, but don't realize it. And it was just like, wow, this is just so amazing. And there's just such great feelings in me. And then he was talking about the spiritual, and I was always into that anyway. And I could just see how much more potential I had and how much more I was than what I'd been told or what I'd believed and what had restricted me in my life. And I didn't have to believe that all my life had been a waste. And so I was listening to loads of his and that, and really kind of growing as a person. And then it happened, I was always kind of interested in Indigenous anyway. And then I saw a advert just popped up on Facebook about Indigenous 3 principles from an Indigenous perspective. And I'd had this kind of spiritual awakening, and it really kind of felt almost like an indigenous type of experience. And I thought, I have to go on here and ask them this question. And so this feeling just took me there to that this was the right thing for me to do. And so I went in and I kind of listened to them all, and I was like, I must ask this question, I must ask this question. And then I finally got to, and I asked, and Harry passed me on to Paddy, who's an indigenous lady in America. And I saw it as kind of a negative experience, and like kind of quite a frightening experience, really. And that's when I spoke to Harry, and he said about it being spiritual gifts, and it was like a whole new perspective for me. And then I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And then Harry invited me to this group. And so I came along, and I'd been to like lots of different mental health groups and that, and it was all kind of, this is my diagnosis doing this to me. I'm miserable. I'm never going to get well. And it's all talking about that. And then suddenly I came to this group, these wise people, and they were talking about how it was from a spiritual perspective, and that when you go to that feeling and that spiritual, that is where the healing is. And then every time I would go, I would just get this amazing feeling that I'd never felt before. And I just would grow to this whole new level. And I mean, at first, my mind was just kind of like, I call it like the busy bees in the angry bees in the beehive, and it was so buzzing around. But as I quietened down there, and then that feeling and the connection with everyone, and I got that experience of that oneness. And then every time, and then I would see it in a new light. And so then I would just kind of, all the worries and the troubles and that would just drop away. And then I could say, yeah, there is this purity in me, in everybody. And then I just thought, this has to go out to the world, because just seeing people in the system and that, and seeing how like people are being fouled in that, and seeing that actually everyone has this potential to heal. And why don't people know about this? Why aren't people told about this? And so, I mean, I went from a person who couldn't like before even speak on the phone, or was so shy in that. And then when I had this transformation, suddenly I was just this new confident person, and I could go out, and I was just started. And at first it was kind of disheartening, because I wasn't getting much replies. And like Harry said, I kind of sort of asked God, like, well, I want to get this out there, help me, and that. And then suddenly I started getting these replies coming through about, do you want to do this show and that? And it was the same. And it's just seeing that guiding light. And so it's seeing the whole kind of, to me, the three principles are how like what we call God, or what we call the energy of everything, or what people call Allah, or the name they want to give it, the Great Spirit, and that, how it works. And so I kind of love to look now at mind as the intelligence of everything, and just go out into nature and see the animals doing their things naturally and being guided, and seeing the squirrels gathering their nuts and knowing where to bury them, or the salmon that know how to swim up to the river where they were born. Or the one I saw recently was that they found these balls of moss in Alaska that had just appeared on this iceberg, and all of them would move in tandem, exact synchronicity to each other. And they thought they were just going up downhill and that. And the scientists checked, and they found they actually move uphill, and they move against wind. And so it's just seeing that actually all of nature is being guided by this intelligence, and I'm being guided by it too. And it's guiding me to healing all the time. Or I can see a tree that's dead, and then there's bits growing. So I've always got that hope within me that always, even when I'm in pain or I feel ill now, I know I'm going to come back to that healthiness again. And then I see the consciousness of the awareness of God, or the awareness through me, and seeing that there's the levels of it. And when I'm kind of a low level, I'm in the dark, and it's quite scary in the dark when you're down there. And then, but then as you grow, your light comes out, and you see more and more. And you don't realize that actually you were standing in the Garden of Eden the whole time. And so then you can appreciate the beauty of everything. And I see, whereas before I would go out for walks and just be depressed all the time and thinking about all my troubles, I can now look at nature and see I'm part of that nature, and there's beauty everywhere. And that beauty is me, and that beauty is there. And that's there for a reason. I'm here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. None of us are by accident. And we just kind of get lost. And then seeing that power of thought as the bridge between the formlessness and the form, or between God and the form, and then it comes through, and we interpret life through it. And then we're kind of always getting little bits, and then we're kind of turning them into our own interpretation, thinking that's truth. And then when I realize, actually, no, I don't have to believe that, and I can not have to get stuck in that mud and that trap, and just see that it's just thought coming in, and that it will pass again. And that I don't have to see that as me, or attached to that, or see that as that's me broken, and get more and more tangled in the mess. And so it's just given me so much hope for life. And I'm just the gratefulness of finding the principles, and finding Sid, and finding the group and these powerful people, and seeing what's happening in the world, and how the world's changing through this understanding, and how people who have been told that they have no hope in life actually do have hope, and it's just somebody else's misunderstanding has been projected onto them, which then they're bought into, and that you don't have to buy into that. You can see and you can get that feeling, and that feeling is who we truly are, and it's always available to us. We just don't know it, or we've forgotten it. And so sometimes I might think, oh, I've lost it again, but then I remember, no, you haven't. It's always there, and you're always going to get it again. And whatever happens in life, it was there, and whatever happens, I'm going to be okay, and I don't have to things happen to me in the world and let it destroy me, or let it make me think I'm hopeless, and that I know that actually I will go back to it and I can cope with whatever happens to me. And that actually what we call God in that is always got my back and is always guiding me back. So when I let go of my concepts and my ideas and who I think I am, I will get the correct kind of wisdom come through of what to do and know what to do and have that hope the whole time.
That's beautiful, Joe. That's really beautiful. I'd like to now talk about each of the members of the group. We did a talk at the Suffix user group, which each member talked about different aspects of the principles. So Joe talked about mind. John talked about thought. John, if you listen to him, he'll sound totally different than Joe. The outstanding thing that we got from that, Kelly, was each member so uniquely different in how they're expressing the understanding that they have experienced. And they've not only have found their voice, they've found their uniqueness. And that I highly emphasize in what we're uncovering. So John is more, he comes from a Christian background, but he doesn't like religion, but he loves Christ consciousness. And he talks about something from that perspective. And then Nikki talked about consciousness, and Nikki is a psychotherapist. And we met on I forget this thing we all do for volunteer. And I heard her share an insight, and I went, wow, this is deep. This is fantastic. And I brought her in to talk to the group, but it turned out she had a huge background in depression. So she wanted to join the group. That was great. And then Mark talked about oneness, and he has a PhD in physics, and he's a gifted child and all the things and so on, but he had background in mental health and also addiction, lots of addiction with pharmaceutical drugs to helping him with the stuff with codeine, etc., like that, and benzos, etc. And he talked about oneness, and it was like listening on PBS, a scientist talking about the oneness of life. And he explains to us how if a pea is on one end of the universe and another pea is at the other end of the universe, if one pea moves, it affects the other pea, type of thing. So don't tell me it's not energy, it's, type of stuff. And he also gave an example that was just dynamite. It just knocked my socks off. They did an experiment, because he's a scientist, so he's approaching it from a whole different perspective than Joe and I are talking about. And he talked about this great story, Kelly. You're going to like this story, I think, maybe. And he said they did an experiment with rats, and the rats were put in water, and they were trying to swim around and stuff like that. And then after about an hour, they started to sink. And they pulled the rats out, and they were all saved, type of thing. Then after they rested, they put them back in the water. How many times longer were they able to stay in the water now, Kelly? Just a question for you, but since you were not just a pretty face, but the host of the show.
Oh, please tell me. Please tell me. Don't make me Harry.
How many times? Just to get, nobody knows, so you're not going to look funny by giving the wrong answer. How many times would you say?
I have no idea.
Well, guess what? I'm insisting you say something.
3.
60. 60 times as long. Nobody could have guessed that, Kelly. So, even though you really missed the mark, was totally wrong, etc., etc. But nobody could have guessed it. 60. Once the thought is gone that of fear and insecurity, they knew they were going to be saved. 60 times as long in the water because they were relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
They were at peace. That what Joe was talking about inside, they were there, and they knew they didn't have to worry about drowning. When they worried about having to be drowned, then it was only 1 hour. 60 hours. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that thought would have such a dynamic effect. But that's what Mark talked about, and then connected it all to the oneness. Isn't that a great story?
It is. It's a beautiful story.
It's
It's
different. It's different.
it is, and that's what I love about the principles is there's lots of metaphor. There's lots of metaphor people use to give the examples because a lot of times we can envision. Our minds are beautiful sources of being able to vision, and so we use these metaphors. But that little story is, that same with difference. How's that? Same with difference. It's providing us a truth where, if we were the swimmers, would we ever fathom that? Would we ever fathom that we could last that long or do it for that long? And in the moment, probably not.
In the moment, things change. One time, Kelly, I was in Cancun, and this is a true story. And I was in Cancun. They have huge currents, and so I was walking up to my ankles in water, and a wave came and pulled me out. And they have flags. Black is the worst. This was red, the second worst. So the waves were 6 feet high, pulled me out. I could still see the shore, but I couldn't. And I swam with all my might, like the rat. And I didn't move an inch because the current was so strong. All of a sudden, I realized I was totally 100% exhausted. The waves are coming down every second on me, pushing me under and stuff. And I get the realization, oh my God, I could die out here. And I just saw the lifeguard trying to get out to me, but he couldn't make much headway, and the waves are pouring down. And I get this thought, maybe I can ride the top of the wave, and it could ride me in a little bit. And I tried 6 times with my mind, my little mind. 6 times down the water, coming out. And then I look again, and the lifeguard is starting to make a little headway, and it got distracted. Just got distracted. Guess what happened? Intuitively, that's the power, guys. Intuitively, I caught the top of the wave. I don't know how I did it. It was like God, an angel came, lifted me to the top of the wave. I rode in enough to get that much of my toe on the ground, that much. Able to get it a bit, and it got pulled out again. And then a little bit later, the lifeguard made it. And he gave me the buoy, I pulled me in. How did I feel? Wow, what a roller coaster ride that was. Boy, that was exciting. But when I told my sister and her husband about it, they were shocked because I could have died. But I was just exhilarated from the whole experience. Fantastic. Except I got sick for 3 days after that from swallowing so much salt water. That's when you take the worry, the insecurity, you become something else. Let's call us what Sid often says about people, geniuses type of stuff. You become a different person when you step into that intuitive feeling of who you are. But without thought, they're a little bit like a loose cannon. And that was my reputation. Harry Debitsky, the loose cannon, But with thought, not so loose, And then I had to listen to my instincts. So we had that's one last member. From all the people are from the UK, but a guy phones me up. I had coached him a little bit. Oh, orangutan, just wouldn't listen and talking all the time. From Croatia. And he says, I want to join the group. I go, oh, this guy ain't going to fit in at all. He's not even from England, Joe. You know how you English guys are, type of stuff. And but I wanted to be nice, so I met with him. But one person before the transformation, after the transformation, he thanked me for all the coaching I had done, which I considered to be Zippo, and he had changed. He had found. He was all of a sudden like deep, profound, amazing. So he came into the group and he changed the composition again. And he talked about silence. So on that talk, we had Joe talking about mind, thought, consciousness, oneness, and then silence. And then Bill wrapped it up with taking little notes from each of us and so on. Beautiful, beautiful wrap up. And then I might have told another story, as you can imagine, Kelly. I probably did do that type of stuff. So they're unique in their expression of their transformation, and they're all finding their voice. Joe was like, machine gun. But you can see he's not a machine gun anymore, type of thing. He's got lots of good energy. And my God, he finds groups for us to talk to, non-3P groups. Can you imagine what a treat that is? No offense, I like 3P groups. You guys have come a long way, but non-3P groups. And we talked just the other day with this guy, new approach to mental health. And he was cool, wasn't he, Joe?
Yeah, he was a lovely guy and really inquisitive as well and interested in what we was talking about.
Yeah, very inquisitive. So it was fresh and new. You never know with the non-3 people what they're going to talk about.
Let me ask you something there. So the two of you are like excited about non-3P. So what are you seeing there that is different?
Joe, that's a good question for Joe.
Well, I mean, they've kind of been told, haven't they, the biomedical kind of chemical things and the kind of intellectual understandings, and so it's kind of given that gift that Sid discovered to more people, and then seeing that actually there are people who are receptive to it, and then obviously not everyone is straight away, and so it's kind of spreading the message more to people who haven't heard of it, and actually giving that gift out and actually showing that actually other people can come and discover for themselves their own wisdom through this understanding. And so it's kind of the branching out really, and kind of showing more of the world what there is available to them.
Joe, what's her question? What's the conflict, or what are they thinking, and what are we dealing with when we're talking to them about that?
Well, a lot of times they still believe the kind of what a biological idea of mental health, which is told in the media and that still, and that they're kind of are their thoughts and what they've been told, and that they don't have any hope. And so it's kind of showing them really that they need, they can have it within themselves. And so people actually believing that is the kind of difficulty, because people kind of see themselves as, like you said with John, as being losers or being broken. And so they're latched on to that kind of idea, really, that kind of comfort and safety.
And there's another show we're going on next week, and the lady, they all have latched onto something with the media, with the new stuff, the social media going out. They all have latched onto something positive, but they're stuck in their thinking about what mental health is and so on. So this lady has a show about hope, but she wants you to talk about all the misery and suffering and the details of of what you're going through, and that eventually you'll go through that and there'll be hope. Well, that's a kind of a long stretch, from stuff. So when she came on, I just don't want to talk about that stuff too much. I mean, we are trying to find, for us, we're talking, what's the balance between the story of the misery or the suffering, and when do we get the transformation and move on to what the feeling of the transformation is. And it's always that way, Kelly. Sid always said, talk about your experience. But of course, he's not saying stay in the mud, talk about the transformation, when the smile came on your face, Kelly, where before it was the sad Kelly or whatever. I have no idea what your story is, Kelly. Maybe you were always bubbly, but within your head, there was stuff happening, right?
Oh, there was lots of stuff. Lots of I can share openly that I've been a 12 stepper for it'll be 40 years. And the 12 step programs, some of you may know or be familiar with, is a place where people go for recovery. Yet the overlap of the principles for me was a place that took the 12 steps to a whole nother place. It took me from a place of seeing, like the 12 steps are almost like somewhere to go. Like you're going to get to the 12th step and where the principles are a part of me. I'm not going anywhere to get anywhere or achieving something. I struggled with an eating disorder, bulimia, and the experience was I was so caught in my mind. I was so caught in the belief that what I was living in, this physical form I had, was not acceptable. And the place where, the principles and program overlapped for me wasn't so long ago. It wasn't so long ago. I was able to see so much more that even my colleagues and partners that have been in the programs, 12-step programs for a long time, are seeing that, like, just as you said, Harry, we're not there to commiserate on the problem. We're there to be part of the healing process. And so whatever gets me there in a speedier, faster, stillness, peaceful way is the way that I wanted to go. Yet my mind was keeping me in the dilemma and the problem for years and years. Now I've had many years of recovery. And the thoughts that I've created are shifting from program to principles. But actually, in program, it says right at the bottom, we're here for the principles of the program, which I think is really, beautiful, because there's never one way to get there. We're all getting there in the way we see intuitively, wisdom-wise, that's right for us. And each person will make those decisions for themselves. And I'd like to go back to Joe if I could for a minute. Joe, that was a beautiful share, lovely share. Thank you. And I'm seeing so much more about you. And I want to ask, what do you think for yourself was your difference? Where did wisdom land you into seeing something more?
Well, it allowed me to see that actually that power of the universe is within all of us, and that is within me too. And I'm not worse than anybody else. I'm not a broken person, or I'm not a victim of my genetics or an illness. And that actually I don't have to look at other people and say, I wish I was them. They have so much more than me, or so much more potential than me. And seeing that actually that's within myself as well. And each and every person has it as much as anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then Joe, what Joe is really good at is he can take criticism and accept it and grow from it. So he's always looking for a way to break past his old patterns. And I'm not doing that for him. He's doing that for himself. So he's just, but as he finds positive feelings, remember, guys, positive feelings lead to mental health. That's the three principles, the essence of the three principles. You want mental health? Positive feeling. Joe is living that more and more and more. And with that, he has time to be extremely creative, which he is. He's an unbelievably creative human being. Most of the people trapped in addiction and mental health are advanced rather than limited. But of course, our society with the very low level of real recognition of wisdom doesn't see that. In a way, the status quo is designed to keep us a lower emanation of who we are. And Sid's principles that he uncovered are there to allow Kelly to be the genius that she is. I don't mean it in a limited way. I mean unlimited potential of Kelly to be all that she really is. And that feeling is hard to turn down. It's quite a beautiful feeling. We all have an image of ourselves as losers. And as we give that up, of course, it's not the psychological model is, well, then you fix that. That's not what Sid was talking about. He was talking about experiencing total freedom, unlimited potential. What a spiritual identity we have. I like that. Yeah.
I'm going to say that words are really, past the words. Sid would always say, past the words. So people see who they are in their uncertainties or insecurities or their frames of thinking as they'll have their own word for whatever that is, whatever they see that is. And Sid was pointing in the direction of everything that we are not. How's that? Everything that we are fully and completely, the wholeness, the oneness, the way in which we shine. And like you said, it's our limited thinking, our contaminated thinking. It brings us back to places that those words of labeling show up, where we find I may, and then use the label, whatever you want. And it's the pointing in the direction of wholeness and the understanding. Joe, you said it so nicely. You're bringing people from the non-principles world into insight, into something they haven't seen before. And that place that you found for yourself. And what greater experience, as Harry was saying, was to shine. The best we can do is shine in who we are. That's how I see it. And as we do that, people can see that there's a difference in change and opportunity in the share of who we are.
So I'd like to now just delve into what Sid meant by the spiritual reality of life.
Sure.
And instead of me talking about it, I thought Richard could just talk an inch. Now, just to let you know, Richard helped me with the cover of the book, and he took this great picture of me, what you can't see. It's a dynamite picture. I just want to tell a quick story about it. So Richard I phoned him up and he says, have you got a picture, a recent picture? Of course, I looked a lot better when I was, whatever. And I said, no. And so he came over, we took a picture. I wasn't ready for it. My hair was a mess. I had a shirt on that was too tight. The buttons were popping up because I gained a little bit of weight and stuff like that. And I looked about 80 years old. I went, I can't have this picture on my cover. It's going to be there for immortality, and I'm going to look like a. And then I decided, I did the woman thing, Kelly. I went to got the haircut, cut the eyebrows, shaved well, type of thing. Got in the big woman thing. I got into
Is that
good.
a woman thing? I don't know. It looks like it's a man thing these days too.
Okay, well, not this guy, man's thing. And then I got into a really good space. And then we went, it was a sunny day, and he took this picture, and I looked about 30 years younger. These were about 2 or 3 days apart. So you can see we're moving in and out. Mr. 80-year-old, Mr. 50-year-old. Of course, the reality of it is I'm only 16, but that's another story. So anyway, Richard took those pictures. We had a great time. And then we went to the pub and had a great meal and stuff like that. And so, Richard, can you tell us just for a second, this is a short little ramble, how you saw Sid sharing the spiritual nature of the principles?
And I'm just going to jump in before Richard begins. Richard, would you mind, because this is impromptu and it's lovely, just sharing a little bit about yourself before you share the experience? Because nobody here in the room was prepared to know you, so I'd love you to do that as well.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks, Harry. I'm a creative person. I describe myself as a creative professional. I'm graphic designer, marketing, communications, photography, music, fly fishing, all that sort of stuff. I mean, whatever pursuits that makes yourself tick, that you love what you do is one of the key things. And that's what I've had the very good fortune of doing all of my life, and had the exceptional good fortune of accidentally uncovering Sid and what he had uncovered, just not intentional, but it just came to me. And like Sid said, when people ask him what happened to him and, why did you pick what you picked? And he said, well, I didn't pick it, it picked me. And like innately, we're all wired that way. And one of the states of mind that I absolutely love, there's a very short video that encapsulates a state of no thought. And that's being purely in the moment. That is probably, Sid used words like isness, nothingness, allness. They're just words. And you used the word metaphor. And I love that fact, because when you get an insight, or when you receive an insight that comes from within you, you don't go out searching for it. It just happens for you. And one of those happenings for me was 2 words, I'm okay. And that was my initial turning point in my life, that went from being insecure, because believe me, I was insecure prior to that point. But after that experience, the settling of within myself and the confidence that came with it. I used to count to 10 before I'd make phone calls in an area that I was top in my class. Why? I was insecure. After my I'm okay insight, I stopped counting and just would pick up the phone and call. Another insight that came is around a book that came to me, as opposed to me going to it and say, I'm going to write this. It said, write this. And in fact, Dick and Bettinger said, well, why are you asking me to write it? You write it. And this is a book called Essa. It's Metaphors for Life. And it's based on storytelling, tribute to Sid and his experience and the wisdom that flows through that experience that he had. And the interesting thing is, metaphor, it's an analogy, it's a word trying to describe the indescribable. And the really neat thing about, and Joe, you picked up on mind. Another word for mind is God. Another word for is essence. And the root word of essence is essa. And it means, it's Latin, and it means be. Really simple. And that's the whole purpose of our essence, is just to be, to experience what the essence is in that singular moment of thoughtlessness. And that's a cool word, where thought is not asleep, but it's in such a pure state that our personal mind quiets down, so that there basically is a state of thoughtlessness that exists that connects us soul to soul with other beings in the planet. And the planet is a finite definition of
So
reality.
how did Sid epitomize that, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, he would be able to take you by sharing his feeling to that state of no thought.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mark, Mark also was on the island. Could you just say a few words?
Are we having a group call here, Harry?
Oh, I don't know what we're having. But
I'm just
it's
I'm just going to add a postscript here.
fun for me to hear what they of something. And also, I get tired of talking all the time. I do a lot of talking, and it's nice to hear what other people can express in the same way that I could, but differently.
absolutely. And this is your time. You can make it whatever you like. And I'd love to hear from Mark.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark, just for fun. Not
Is-
too long, though. Not too long. Yeah.
Just so the room is familiar. So these are people that once you become part of the principles, Richard and Joe and Harry and Mark and some of the people that are in this room today, they met possibly because of the principles and become very close due to the principles. And so a lot of times, like I said to Shona today, it's like I just know her without knowing her because there's a connection that's happening, an unforeseen connection between people. So Mark is a new friend to me, thank you, Harry, from a couple calls ago on Kind Mind. And we would love to have you share, Mark. Come on. I can't see you because I'm on one screen, but maybe if you say hello, I can get are you there?
Can you hear me?
There you are. I can't see you. Can you speak up just a little bit so I can see you?
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes, I can. Hi, my new friend. How are
There
you?
you go. Hi. Yeah, I didn't expect to be called upon here. Thank you, Harry. But
My pleasure, Mark.
hello, everyone. Yeah, I came upon the island completely guided, as I think each of us has through our lives, just come upon this wisdom right at the time that we really wanted something more meaning. And mine had been a journey around the world for several years, working and then university, always looking more and more for a deeper meaning that it wasn't coming easily, and you pick up books on Buddhism where you'd be tantalized. But so I just stepped on the island momentarily to visit a friend and told him how much I was looking for more meaning. And he said, "Oh, I'm working for a couple who know a recently enlightened man, Sid Banks." And I said, "Oh, I'd really like to meet him." And so they set up a meeting. And the minute I heard him speaking, I knew he knew truth. So it was incredible. And I changed my plans. I moved to the island right away, and everything fell into place. And so, long story short, there people heard to different levels, even though they knew they'd found a very good source. It's a matter of your own evolution as far as how deeply you hear that the feeling is really so important. That feeling is really way more important than any amount of getting it with your head. And it takes a little while for some people to hear, for the penny to drop, that the feeling is so important that will take you to the space within yourself, to that dimension that takes you, that shift in your consciousness, where you embrace, you're actually enveloped in the deeper consciousness of everything. That contact with the deeper mind, the deeper consciousness that is everything. You realize that there's no world out there almost. You're so totally, if you're lucky enough to have that insight, that you're so totally in touch with it that you're no longer you realize that the outside world is just that, and the outside world of the illusion, that you are much more, that it's much more profound. I've been realizing the last few days that I don't have to depend on anything to fall into place for me to be happy. That you have to go back to that you are something so much more, so much deeper, and it's so much more profound. You have to respect that. So what would I say? Just, we don't want to be talking about the affairs of the world so much that we're forgetting that feeling of deep connection.
Well, that feeling that Mark's talking about, of course, is what brings magic to you. So I didn't pick the indigenous, it picked me. Sid did not pick the psychological. He said in his unpublished autobiography very clearly, I did not pick psychology, it picked me. That's the same for me in indigenous with the Muslim, now the mental health. I had no intention of going, Kelly, into mental health. I have no anything to say about it. But luckily I have Joe, who does like to talk about that aspect of it, to teach me. And that's what happened, Kelly, with addiction. I had the best teacher in the world, the top person in the world, Greg Suki. Not all the people you're talking about. I'm talking about the top person. And he taught me about addiction. Then after I learned, and then the people came on and they taught me. Everybody taught me. But who taught me the most? The clients, the people, they're the ones. And one day, and you guys got to get into this. One day, I was with Dr. Amy Johnson. She's really different than me, really different. She's really psychological and I'm really spiritual, the type of thing. And we did a talk together. And then she said, I didn't like it. It was too, and then I thought for a second, I said, she's onto something. She's really successful at answering what's on the minds of the people. She really understands that. And then she answers it from a 3P perspective. I got to do more of that. What's on their minds? It's the same thing. Sharon often comes to the Tawhid show that I do. Muslim. I hardly met a Muslim, let alone what's on their mind. Oh man, they're beautiful. Oh, so spiritual. And what does their religion teach? Detachment. Oh, that's a good one. I am attached to any thought. That's not Muslim. That's not grace to Allah. No detachment. I thought, oh, this feels freer. It all teaches us who we are. You're Muslim, you're indigenous, you're this. Just because your skin is white, don't get Joe's as indigenous as the indigenous people. That's what I recognized in Joe. He's in my book. He published a poem. I couldn't write a poem so long and so beautiful. Something of a butterfly and stuff. He's creative. He flies. He soars. We are all of that.
I was just going to say, I heard something when Richard was talking about no thought, and what came to me was like, no thought is God's thought without the contamination of personal content.
Yeah.
If I could just speak to that, Joe, like this is what I find in, I guess if you take it from an intellectual perspective, you could use the word psychological perspective, any frame of mind that puts it outside of the essence of who we are. And that is the purest state of functioning, is that the thought activity actually it doesn't disappear. It just idles down to neutral. And you're there in a pure state that allows you to embrace just about anything. I would say everything. And Harry, you talked about the scope of existence. Infinity was a word that Sid would use to describe the true nature of who we are, of who the essence, of what the essence is, what our experience potential is. And I mean, I embrace that. Again, it embraced me as, I mean, part of my brand for my business, my creative business, is the infinity symbol. And people think you're crazy. But when you look at removing the limitations, and the limitations only exist in the mind, it's an open playing field.
And what's interesting is you just have to trust it. It's all trust. We don't trust ourselves, and so we interfere with it. I love this saying: every second of every moment, God is talking to us, and we go, "Could you come back another time? I'm busy right now."
I have to ask a question. So it's beautiful when the people who were working directly with Sid come to the room, because the experiences, you know, a lot of people are seeing the principles from a book or from, you know, some frame of reference that has been brought to them. But all of you that have been sharing indirectly or directly have had the experience of Sid, where many in the rooms are coming. They're just learning about Sid. They probably don't even know who Sid is, but they know what the principles are, and they're coming to Kind Mind to see more of the experience, whether it's for the spirituality of the experience, whether it's for removing thought. But here you all are. Mark, did you have one-to-ones with Sid after your initial meeting? Were you in the salons in his home? And Richard, were you there with him? Yeah, together? Were Mark and Richard, were you both together in that?
Where all of us, we were a group of people, and that's how we were done. But I want to answer the question. You don't have to have known Sydney Banks.
No.
I was stuck in for years. I mentioned that years. So experienced, lots of contact with Sid, stuck. So that's thought, eh?
Mm.
And why was I stuck? See, Sid says, don't look at the symptoms. Ask why. That's an indigenous question. White man, how do you do this? Indigenous, why? What's the cause? And indigenous, first cause is their teaching, not second, third, fourth, fifth, tip of the iceberg stuff. First cause. Why? Why was I stuck? Good question, isn't it, Kelly? The reason I worshiped the man instead of the message, the essence of his teaching.
Absolutely.
I gave all the credit to Sydney Banks. How much of it did he want? None. He kept saying, it's in you, Harry. And I kept saying, yeah, well, I'm in your company. It's in you. It's in me. Always that. Always that. You cannot hear the purity. Remember, it's not quantity, it's quality. The purity of the principles is the message. That's what he wanted maintained. He didn't want it to go out to thousands and thousands of people. Yes, he did, as long as the purity of the message was not distorted.
Yes. And there's, you know, going way back, there was a place where Sid, you know, let's say literally put his foot down and said, because that conversation came up where God and the talk of the formless was not being shone on, where the light was not going there. And Judith Sedgman said, you got to straighten this out. Like he came to them and said, this is a spiritual program. You know, there's nothing but this in this program. And they got pretty clear pretty fast over there in LeConner, and the word
not so fast. Not you're making it sugarcoat, not so fast.
Okay, fair enough. I think what it was there was a very big light on clarity on seeing that the three, and was it not, maybe what some of you can correct me, because this is me experiencing the stories as I piece them together, but was Sid not speaking the divine mind, the divine?
See, here's so if you get anything out of this talk, that there's a feeling that you would like a little more of, we're pointing, read Sid's material, listen to Sid Banks. He's the teacher. The others are different levels of that. Needed, because we are also different levels of that as well. But if you want to get the essence of the principles, that word that Richard uses, Sid's material, not Harry's material. I would love you to read my book, but it's not as good as Sid's stuff. But perhaps my stuff will communicate to you as a bridge to Sid's stuff, type of stuff. So we want to emphasize what Sid, when Sid moved on, he realized if you took him out of the picture, there was something lost. It's almost like tradition, connecting to the first man who experienced the principles, Sid Banks. It transformed his life before your very eyes, and then he taught the purity of the principles. And when he talked on Salt Spring, it was a little different. He started, Kelly, it's a spiritual reality, and then moved up. Don't arrive at it's a spiritual reality. He started. And did we understand what he was talking about? Nah, we didn't. We couldn't get it.
I love that. You know, there's participants in the room, people that I work with in the room that are seeing this sort of this understanding for the first time. And I say to them, "Do you get it?" And they're like, "I don't get it. I'm not getting it." I'm like, "Great. This is a great place to be." But how about we do this? If the panel, the lovely panel who's shown up, thank you all for just jumping in. How about we open the room up to some questions for, anyone and everyone to share and see who would like to. I'm just going to go to gallery. See if anybody here has something to share or something to ask or just some input, whatever way you want to, whatever way you'd like to contribute is completely okay. We've got many in the room still pondering this understanding. I love it, everybody. It's always great to have the silence. I can sit in silence for a long time. That's one of the things, the gifts the principals brought me. Because I know that the insight of thought takes some time. Nice feeling.
Hi, Kitty. Can I?
Hi, Shona.
Oh, good.
I would love to speak to Joe. Joe, Kelly calls me her sister because we meet on webinars. And I remember you from webinars. I think we did some Michael Neal courses together.
Yeah,
And
sorry, yeah.
the transformation in you is just beautiful. It's really wonderful. Even your voice has changed. That's transformed. It was higher before.
Thank you. Yeah.
and it was just lovely to hear what you were saying today. It was so heartfelt. I was just blown away. It was beautiful. Just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear. It's beautiful. It's lovely to hear. Thank you.
It's amazing, isn't it, Shauna? the change
Mm.
in such a short period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
The
You're a
spirit.
good influence, Harry.
No, it's a spirit. Nothing, yeah. Joe was the missing piece in the group. The person who could go out, take it out to the non-3P and 3. And he had so much genius energy, but no voice to share it. So that's why he was that other stuff. And then when he found that, and I gave him a few tips and so on, told him it's not just to sugarcoat it. It's not just to, it's got to be honest. And you also, it's not always working out who you're talking to and stuff. You got to be aware of that and so on. I'm very practical in what I help people with. But Joe just emerged because he doctored himself. He did it himself. It was beautiful to watch, transform. And of course, who's the big benefactor? All of us.
But also it's the journey you have to go through. And sometimes you have to suffer the knocks and fall in the bushes a few times and kind of brush the thorns off and get back up and see the growth and the pathway and appreciate the kind of knocks and the journey you have to go through and the kind of sometimes the horrors and that as actually being part of the spirit and the beauty as well. And that they all take you to where you're supposed to be. And without them, you wouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm. I was referencing, Joel, that's great. I was referencing to a student the other day about the second chance and how people talk about, the naysayer or the person that has maybe more thinking than the next person, and how that experience of seeing, like Sid said, and I'm sure you guys can appreciate, we like to play fun with this one, the seeing and then the seeing. And I wasn't there to hear him say that, but it's that seeing more moment to moment through brushing off the thorns and falling in the trees, through seeing something different through that. Yeah.
How do you see that? Just curious. So how do you see that difference?
Well, for myself,
yeah.
The way seeing is for me is that I less and less, I'm more and more, let's do this. I'm more and more, I'm looking for the love. I'm looking for where I can take responsibility. I said to someone recently that I'm becoming more mature in my responsibility to self, not looking for other people to do the job for me, not looking outside myself for, just an example, I had my niece this weekend and, last year, 2 years ago, I'd be like, well, why can't you drop her off? Because we live at a distance. It's not for them to drop her off. It's for me to go take care of what I want to do. But I had thinking around that. And so seeing is seeing my responsibility to self and taking out anyone else for that matter. Xenia, please, lovely to have you.
Oh, thank you. Lovely to be here. My English speaking is not so good, but I will try about I can do it. I have in a long lifetime listened to people's problems and bad stuff, and I don't like it anymore. So I would like to know what I can do so I don't give my energy to people's problem. I would like to speak about the good stuff and the beauty in the life and the beauty in people. But it's difficult to me to get it. Do you understand what I mean?
Great question. That's a very honest question. Very honest question. Well, Joe?
I think it's very much seeing the beauty in yourself, that when people see your transformation, they get inquisitive of it, and then they want to know. And it's when you speak to the person beyond their issues and you open your heart to them and you show them first that you do care and that you do see, but then you speak to that inner self within them, that's within you, and you let them know that actually they have all the answers in them already, but it's just that they've buried it within these problems that they perceive as being who they are. And kind of, for me, it's like when I became attached to my problems, I saw them as me, and they've made my character and who I've become. Whereas seeing them that actually they are something that was at one point was true, but now don't exist anymore. And I'm just keeping them alive within myself and building that story around it, and then keep revisiting the story. Whereas if I see it as just a story and something that actually I've just become trapped in, but I can break free again. And then when I go to that positive feeling, that nice feeling, it will just get me out of that pattern. And it's just a pattern that I've got stuck into. Like I've become stuck in the maze and I don't know how to get out again. But when I trust in myself that I can actually find the direction to go in, and I look in that direction and actually just realize that, okay, I've got stuck in that temporarily, but I will get out again because it's within me. And then just conveying that to the people.
And let me add a little perspective to it from a different angle. So you always see people are talking. Kelly will talk about it from one angle, all pointing to the same thing, of course. I'll talk about it from another and another. That's how our group is, all these different angles to the same question. Mm-hmm. So for me, what I'd like to relay to you, the greatest difficulty I had in my life, I talked about my blockage with regards to hearing truth, but the blockage of listening to people was that I interpreted what was good and bad. And as long as I did that, I was using my intellect rather than my intuitive feelings to guide me to that place of connection with people. Now, when I started to counsel people or help people at the beginning, the biggest transition was that had destroyed my life with my kids, because I was telling them what was right and what was wrong. And then we would go into a negative state. Of course, it's that people want to talk about their problems. And I would shift them out of it because it was bad. Then one day, I sat in it. I just sat in it. And it naturally transformed from negative to positive. The only thing being the obstacle was my interpretation of what the situation is. I wasn't sitting in it. And I was so surprised that it would automatically shift to positive at a certain point. But I couldn't sit in the silence of it because I had an interpretation. That was a good one to let go of.
I love the conversation, everyone. Did that answer your questions? What did you hear there? I could add a point too, but I'll just leave it there and see what you're hearing already. What did you hear from what Joe and Harry shared?
Maybe she didn't hear.
Oh.
Yes, oh, sorry. I'm listening very concentrated. I think I have to listen to the recording again, because that if that just is one or two words I don't understand, I miss the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the fact.
But I can feel a feeling that there's something in me who can understand it, but not in my brain.
Yeah. And
not yet.
Past the language, there's a feeling.
Yes.
The other person is whole. Past all of the words, that they're whole and complete. And even though what they're saying to you, you can see that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. This has been a wonderful conversation, unfoldment, very different from our other experiences. So I just love the opportunity to be able to host some of the the other panel members. Thank you, Harry, for, I don't know if I would have pointed them and called them out. So the idea that they shared and you offered that opportunity for them, that was lovely. So Mark, thank you in kind for being here. Joe, for your absolute beautiful, vulnerable unfolding of who you are, because I've seen it too. Shona pointed in that direction, and I've definitely witnessed change. And Harry, for being the experience of shining change on people. And I want to just share that next week we're having the lovely Julian Freeman. Julian is the videographer for the 3 principles, if you will, along with other things. And we'll be at the same time in the same place, and we'll be looking in the same direction. So until next week, thank you all for coming. Thank you for being part of the understanding of changing the world one conversation at a time. So much love. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Harry.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Well, that was a lot.